Hey, I hope you had a great week this week. Friday night coming up, beautiful weather. Hope everything goes well for you tonight. If you're in a football district, if otherwise, other sports, I hope you're enjoying those and having a great fall. Jim Cummins, retired superintendent, working now at X and Lifted Consulting and Coaching, and just really trying to help superintendents as they navigate through the world of education. So, I wanted to take just a little bit of time to go over the finance memo that came out today, just to hit some highlights, maybe to give you some encouragement, some things to think about as you have an opportunity to browse through that. Let's jump in real quick. It won't take long, but wanted to hit some of the high points. I think always just a reminder, if you have confusion about how things are calculated, just pull up one of the memos, the finance memos. It tells you, uh, for instance, the basic formula, prior 3 years. In order to use the current year, you have to estimate. But Classroom Trust Fund uses the ADA from the prior year versus Prop C uses prior year weighted ADA weighted membership. So just like I said, a good way to look back if you have a quick question about how things are calculated. So I want to make note of the state adequacy target and threshold recalculations that are up for the first time in this month's memo. If you'll notice, column free and or fiscal year 27-28 showing the same state adequacy target, but the thresholds for all three weights go up. Free and reduced lunch, special ed, and LEP. All of those thresholds go up. So what that means for you is that if you had the exact same number of students in those categories next year, FY27, you would receive a little bit less weighted ADA. So just something to be aware of as you start planning later in the year for next year's revenue from the state aid. The estimate stayed the same from last month, I believe. So let's just hit on some of these miscellaneous topics. Estimating ADA and average membership. It was critical last year because those thresholds went down and a lot of schools benefited from those lower thresholds. So they estimated get that money in the current year. They have the tool here if you want to run it for this year. If you're seeing an increase in enrollment or an significant increase in your attendance percentage, or you have significant changes in one of the weighting factors, it's a good idea to run this calculation. It doesn't hurt to run the calculation. I would be cautious. Let's say it comes up, it looks like you're up a little bit this year. You might wait a little bit later in the year, run it again. But the idea is if you are going to, if FY26 is going to be your best year, numbers wise, then the DESE wants you to estimate so that you can get paid in this year, so it comes out of this year's appropriation and it helps everybody. You never have to worry about are you going to get paid. If it's bigger this year and you don't estimate, you will get it in October of next year, but that is not ideal for you or for the state. So if you think you might be going up, run that estimation tool and see where you're at. Reminder, minimum wage $13.75 presently, be going up to $15 at the end of the year. So just make note of that if you have employees that are under that threshold. Good idea to refresh on this bonus, stipend, extra duty pay if you need to reach out to legal. But the key point of that is you need to have a contract. And if you're going to pay them extra money, pay your teachers extra money beyond their contract that they've signed already, there needs to be something extra they're doing. It needs to be agreed upon in writing. You need to sign it. They need to sign it. You can't just kind of arbitrarily give additional pay. So be aware of that. I think minimum salary has been covered pretty well. One thing I wanted to touch base on just real quick on this buyout of leased supplies or equipment. I think sometimes this gets confusing. I grew up in the accounting world, so it was just driven into us. But there's a significant difference between an operating lease and a capital lease. So if you are in an operating lease, let's say it is for Chromebooks, or it is for a car, or it is for a bus, an operating lease means you are essentially renting it. You're paying out of the incidental fund as you use that piece of equipment. And at the end of the term, that equipment or item has to go back to the leaseor, the owner of that equipment. If you take possession of that equipment at the end of the term and it was a capital item, then it should have been paid for out of capital projects fund, out of Fund 4. So really understand, when you go into a lease, is it a lease that you're going to own? And if so, it has to be paid for out of capital projects. If it is a lease that the item is going back to the owner at the end of the term, that would be an operating lease, and you can and that pays out of incidental. So just an important little distinction there. For small districts or districts that have smaller amounts of federal money, the single audit threshold this year is going from $750,000 to $1 million. So that is when you hit that threshold of the single audit, they have to do some additional testing on your federal payments. And so if you've lived in that area between 750 and $1 million, this year you might not have to have your single audit done. Save a little bit of money. The audit confirmation reports are something I think sometimes are overlooked by superintendents. At any time you can go in, it's in the same place you go to look at your payment transmittal. So you go to DESE's web apps, you go to payment transmittal, and then instead of, or school finance, and instead of clicking on your payment, you click on reports. You can go to audit confirmation report. You can pull that down, and your bookkeeper or you or whoever can compare at the end of any month what DESE thinks, or they don't think, that is what they have paid you in those different categories. You can check your books at any given time to make sure that is matching up. So for example, they will tell you 5311 basic formula, you have received $1 million as of October. You should be able to go into your books at the end of October and see if you have coded to 5311 $1 million. So it's a great report if you want to check that your codings are right for the dollars that are being distributed by DESE. Audit reports, just a reminder that you should be working with your auditors presently, need those approved by the board and submitted to DESE by the end of the year. Take just a minute here on September membership. As we get into membership being a part of the formula calculation, it becomes even more important. It's always been important. Now it's part of the calculation. But just a couple of quick things. First of all, the count date, last Wednesday in September. So next Wednesday, the 24th, will be the count date. Enrollment is who is enrolled in your district on that date. But an important distinction, membership is who's in your books that have been in a seat the prior 10 days of school. So in other words, if I'm a person that's on the enrollment, but I haven't attended school in the last 10 school days, I am not a membership person. So that's an important distinction. So anybody that is on your student information system count that has been at school in the prior 10 days, that is a member as far as for calculating that. It's important also as you go into the October core data cycle that you understand if a district is paying you tuition for a student, you do not count that student as a member. The district that is paying that tuition would count them, and you would mark them resident too. If a parent is paying tuition, you don't count that person. You mark them as a parent paid tuition student. Sometimes local effort gets a little tricky because you're thinking, well, I'm having to pay a different school for that local effort. And essentially what you're doing is you're not affecting state payment. You are giving them the local collection for that student because they are providing the education for them. So you do not count that student in your membership. That you're just paying local effort. So those are some key things. Make sure that you're trying to keep your core data folks educated on how to fill out the October core data cycle. Contact information, just a quick note. Make sure that, again, core data, beginning of the year, some things really trying to make sure they're clean before you get too far into the year. The August core data cycle, screen 3 and 4, have all of the lines that need to have who is in those positions and what is their correct email. And that way, whether it's federal programs, whether it's special services, whatever it is that DESE is sending out reminders, they're sending those reminders to whoever's listed in that core data screen 3. So make sure that that is updated so you don't miss out on some important information. Quick note here on PK. If you're a PKA or a PKP student, so in other words, I'm an AM or I am a PM student, they are still marked as one attendee because the DESE already knows that it's a half day, versus if they are a PK student, they would need to be going a full day to equivalent to get one FTE. Ridership list, October 8th is the date. Again, you can read here, but the important thing, I worked with a district that did not, they didn't have the board approve that ridership list, so important to make sure that when you do that, you also have the board approve that list for you. So those are some of the key things this month that you need to be looking at. I would also just quick little plug. You can go to my website, drjimcummins.com, resources tab. I put things in there, but I just this week presented to new and emerging superintendents in Jeff City kind of a financial course, 2 or 3 hours we spent together, and the slide deck is attached there in the resources tab. So drjimcummins.com and go to the resources tab and you can get that PowerPoint slide deck. Hope you all have a great weekend, good Friday night, and we'll talk soon.